The nanny state is alive and well.
It sure is, and the control freaks always want more. They want to protect us from ourselves by limiting what we eat, what we do for pleasure, even how we give to charity. They think it's their duty. And I admit I was guilty of this kind of thinking. As a young consumer reporter, I did all this research on what doctors said was bad for us, and I wanted to help stamp it out. After all, lives were at stake. And people have lives. They don't have time to check everything out and find out what's harmful. It's important that the state protect us. The concept of individual freedom was not on my radar screen. I apologize. I was ignorant and arrogant. But at least I had no real power. I couldn't force consumers to avoid unhealthy things. I couldn't force any business to stop selling something. Only government can do that. And sadly, government's filled with people just as ignorant and arrogant as I was, but they do get to use force. Economist Matthew Mitchell covers regulation for the Mercatus Center, and he wised up to the damage control freaks much more quickly than I did. But you know, these regulations do save lives.
The truth is, a lot of these regulations have a lot of unintended consequences. So take, seatbelts. This is often argued. Surely seatbelts save lives.
This is the best one that's always thrown up against libertarians.
Sure.
Look, thousands of lives saved.
Sure. So if you think about the cost that you bear for driving recklessly, right? If you lower the cost of driving recklessly by, for example, making it less likely that you'll be injured when you drive recklessly, people will demand greater speed, right? So it turns out there's a famous study from 1975. An economist named Sam Peltzman looked at the data, and he found, sure enough, after the introduction of seatbelt laws, people actually drove more recklessly. Accidents increased. Now, the probability of getting injured during an accident did fall, but the two effects roughly canceled out. But there's one factor that wasn't canceled out, and that is that pedestrian deaths and cyclist deaths, who of course are not protected by seatbelts, those rose. Consumers make trade-offs in other ways. If you mandate that all new cars have to have all kinds of expensive features, for example, backup cameras, now this discourages people from buying new cars. So now you drive around on clunkers that are more dangerous for other reasons.
Let's talk about secondhand smoke. I'm amazed by how willingly people just give up freedom. That it started by saying some bars could ban smoking. But now in 24 states, smoking in bars is illegal in every bar.
Right.
Can't the smokers have some bars?
All right, well, so this is another one where there's unintended consequences. Those areas where they introduced bans on smoking, actually you saw an increase in accidents related to alcohol. The theory is that people are driving longer distances in order to find bars that either have outside seating or are outside of the jurisdiction.
And were you surprised that smokers didn't resist? People just give up. I mean, I don't smoke. I don't mind it, but a third of the country did at the time.
Yeah, it is interesting how quickly people are willing to give up their freedoms.
But that's not what America is supposed to be about. And now some control freaks in Massachusetts want tobacco sales banned altogether.
Officials in Westminster want to make it illegal to sell all tobacco products to anyone, including adults.
Last week, the town held a hearing about that. 500 people showed up. I like what this guy said.
I find smoking to be one of the most disgusting habits anybody could possibly do. On top of that, I find this proposal to be even more of a disgusting thing that anybody could ever give any town in the United States of America.
Yes, eventually nervous town officials there even shut down that meeting. But maybe people are wising up now and saying enough.
Well, you know, we often are accustomed to thinking about the federal government and federal overreach. But the truth is that a lot of the most intrusive regulations happen at the local level, just like this.
The regulators at least can make a pretty good argument that smoking hurts people and seat belts save lives. But the regulators always want more things like you mentioned.
Beginning March 12th, sugary beverages will no longer be sold by food establishments in portions greater than 16 ounces.
That was my control freak mayor a couple of years ago. A court threw out his soft drink ban, but the proposals keep coming. Recently, Berkeley, California passed a tax on sweetened drinks. A tax, at least, is less onerous than a ban.
Anything that the government wants to accomplish with a regulation, it can also accomplish with a tax. We know from a earlier Supreme Court, John Marshall, says the power to tax is the power to destroy. So there's some point beyond which taxation really can accomplish whatever government wants.
As I said earlier, members of the media often act like the control freaks cheerleaders, and I was one once. MSNBC, of course, is still one. But now maybe the nanny state's gone so far that even the most ridiculous people get upset.
Is feeding the homeless a crime? A new law in one Florida town says it is.
2 pastors and a 90-year-old volunteer are facing jail time after they were arrested for feeding the homeless.
What? Really? Well, yes, Fort Lauderdale passed rules on public food sharing, how and where you can give people food. And boy, when Al Sharpton gets upset about the nanny state, they really have gone overboard. We emailed the mayor. He told us the 90-year-old man was not arrested. What's your take?
This is a guy, he's been feeding the homeless in a park for over 35 years.
He's a chef. He dresses.
He's a chef. He's been doing it. The mayor's take is that he's not trying to outlaw this. He's just trying to make it safe. Simple economics tells you, however, if you raise the cost of giving food away, people are going to give less food away, and homeless people are going to find it their next meal is harder to come by.
But this one, I think, is my weakest case. And, of course, that's the one Al Sharpton embraces, because there is something called a public square. And in Florida, merchants were saying, we got all these vagrants. They're urinating in front of my store. The diners can't eat outdoors. The town gets to police the public square.
Mm-hmm. So I think you can make a much stronger case for regulation in a public square than you can in a private bar and a privately owned piece of property. In this case, it may be possible for them to find another place for them to feed the homeless.